September 26, 1957. Monte Carlo, Monaco. Three small cars are lined up on the sun-drenched streets of the most glamorous principality in Europe. Painted in the French tricolor, blue, white, and red. The press photographers are ready. The crowd is gathered. And behind the wheel of each tiny car sits a racing driver. Not just any racing drivers. One of them is Juan Manuel Fangio, the five-time Formula One world champion. Arguably the greatest racing driver alive at that point. Sitting in a car with a 393 cubic centimeters engine producing 14 horsepower. For context, Fangio's Formula One car produced around 270 horsepower. He had just won his fifth world title. And here he was, folded into a microcar barely larger than a golf cart, smiling for the cameras in Monaco. That is how the Vespa 400 arrived in the world. Maximum style, maximum glamour, minimum engine displacement. And in doing so, it perfectly captured everything that made it one of the most fascinating small cars of the entire decade. To understand why the Vespa 400 existed at all, you need to understand a battle happening behind closed doors in the Italian automotive industry, one the public knew nothing about. Fiat had total domination over the Italian small car market and would not allow an incursion into their territory by an upstart manufacturer. Piaggio, the Italian company behind the iconic Vespa scooter, had been working on a small four-wheeled car since 1952. 5 years of development. Extensive testing, a genuinely well-engineered product. And then Fiat made it very clear, if Piaggio dared sell that car in Italy, Fiat would launch a scooter in direct retaliation, a move that would have threatened the very business keeping Piaggio alive. Piaggio blinked. Italy was off the table. But here's where it gets clever. Piaggio had a sister company in France, ACMA, already producing Vespa scooters at 260 per day with nearly 3,000 employees and production capacity to spare. France had no small car manufacturer able to produce a microcar in sufficiently large quantities. The solution was elegant. Build the car in France. Sell it as a French product. Fiat can't object to a French car in a French market. Piaggio keeps its scooter territory in Italy. ACMA gets a new product line. And French consumers get a beautifully designed Italian microcar that nobody officially admits is Italian. The factory was in Forchambol, a small town sitting alongside the Loire River, surrounded by the vineyards and chateaux that make that part of France impossibly picturesque. A very good place to build a car trying to be sophisticated. Work on the vehicle had begun in 1952, but it would be 5 years before the little car made its debut. This long development period resulted in one of the most well-engineered, extensively tested, and competent of all the microcars. And that engineering shows. Because the Vespa 400, once you get past the adorable dimensions, is a surprisingly serious piece of work. At 9 feet and 5 inches long, the Vespa 400 was 5 inches shorter than a Fiat 500, which also launched in 1957, and 8 inches shorter than a Mini, which wouldn't arrive until 1959. Shorter than a Mini, 2 years before the Mini existed. The body is a steel monocoque, structural and rigid. All 4 wheels have independent suspension on coil springs. The rollback fabric roof opens all the way from the windshield header rail to the rear engine cover, turning the little coupe into a genuine open-air experience on warm European afternoons. The rear hinge doors were coated on the inside with only a thin plastic lining, allowing valuable extra internal space. Even the door design was working harder than it needed to. The spare wheel was hidden under the passenger seat. The battery sat at the front behind a dummy grille on a shelf that slid out for easy access. Everything thoughtfully placed. This was designed by people who took every cubic centimeter of the interior seriously. The British magazine The Motor, clearly expecting the Vespa to be as basic and uninspiring as many rivals, was very impressed overall, finding it far more competent than the price and size suggested. They specifically praised the ride quality, unusually good for a car this small. The engine, a 393 cubic centimeters air-cooled 2-stroke twin-cylinder, 14 horsepower, top speed around 55 miles per hour, fuel economy around 60 miles per gallon. Being motorcycle-derived, it requires oil mixed into the fuel at every fill-up. On early models, you did this manually, measuring the ratio yourself, mixing by hand at every petrol station. During the summer of 1958, a semi-automatic device was fitted. A fully automatic mixing system didn't arrive until 2 years later. So the early ownership experience included, at every fuel stop, a small chemistry lesson. Pull in, fill up, consult your mental notes about the correct 50-to-1 ratio, add your oil, and continue through the Loire Valley feeling simultaneously like a motorist and a mechanic. Charming in its own very specific way. The Vespa 400 made its public debut on September 26, 1957 in Monaco. 3 prototypes in French national colors were showcased. To amplify the event's glamour, Juan Manuel Fangio, Jean Barra, and Louis Chiron were enlisted to drive them. The strategy worked spectacularly. The Paris Salon of 1957 followed, and the Vespa 400 became the sensation of the show. The high-profile launch paid off, with 12,130 cars produced in 1958. That turned out to be the high point. 3 versions were available: the Tourism for everyday use, the Luxe for more comfort, and the GT for those who wanted to pretend their 14 horsepower was somehow sportier than everyone else's 14 horsepower. Vespa also pushed into the American market, where the 400 had a major price advantage, about 2/3 the cost of Volkswagen Beetle. A surprising number were sold, 514 in 1959 and 1,138 in 1960. But the decline was as quick as the rise. Output fell to 8,717 in 1959 despite a price reduction. Commentators suggested the chic image created at launch was not always matched by the car itself, with its awkward gear change, poor soundproofing, and high fuel consumption before a carburetor modification. The gear change was particularly notorious. A central floor-mounted lever working through a mechanism that rewarded patience and punished impatience, not ideal for Parisian commuters. By 1961, production was winding down. Around 30,000 Vespa 400s had been built over 4 years. A decent run, just not the revolution it might have been. Today, the Vespa 400 is genuinely rare. Depressingly few have survived. Many were scrapped because of a tendency for gearboxes to seize up. They leaked oil, owners rarely checked the level, and when transmissions failed, they threw their Vespas away rather than repair them. Which is unfortunate, because surviving examples are now deeply treasured. A restored Vespa 400 sold for $40,320 at RM Sotheby's, Arizona in January 2025. Another fetched $33,600 at the Miami auction in February 2025. The little car that cost 2/3 of a VW in 1959 now commands serious collector money. Almost 60 years after its debut, 29 Vespa 400s gathered in Fortunabolt for a birthday celebration and took to the Magna E-Corps Formula One circuit. 14 horsepower at full force on an F1 track. Not about how fast or how valuable, about how much joy you can squeeze from a machine. Fangio would have approved. The Vespa 400 was born from a corporate negotiation. Designed in Italy, built in France, launched in Monaco with the greatest racing driver in the world behind the wheel. Sold across Europe and America to people who wanted something small, charming, and honest. It has a rollback roof, 60 miles per gallon. A 2-stroke engine that needs its oil hand-mixed like a cocktail. Rear hinge doors. A gear lever requiring patience. And a name that makes every person who sees it do a slight double take before asking, "Wait, Vespa made a car?" Yes, they did. For 4 years in a factory by the Loire. And it was wonderful. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more stories like this.